Before we get started, the name is on the top right of the screen. This place is an underdeveloped area where people without imperial citizenship, including our female protagonist, live. On a typical day, she was feeling hungry and heading home after buying some bread to last her a few days. Unexpectedly, she came across a child. Curious, she asked him what he was doing there. This child had jet black hair and golden eyes that sparkled in the light. The moment she laid eyes on him, someone who looked exactly like him popped into her mind. She asked him if he had anywhere to go and if he wanted to come to her house. Extending her hand, she offered him help. Slowly, he raised his hand and held hers. Little did she know, she was reaching out to the person who would later become her killer, a fallen saint. This story was actually a romance novel that she had created with her younger brother. They had read it so many times that the book was falling apart, as every sentence and setting they had come up with together was precious to them. The main character of the novel was Lucille, a saint trapped in a temple. They had set the story in a war, with the goal of rescuing Lucille from the temple and placing the Holy Grail at the center to make her stand out even more. They had created the perfect stage, and 3 men had fallen in love with the heroine, the main male protagonist, Crown Prince Adrian Bryam, the melancholic sub-male Z. Lockhart, and the main villain of the novel, son of the Demon King, King Raven North. Raven was her favorite character, a cruel and heartless yet stunningly beautiful villain who sought revenge on the entire world. The reason he had turned to the path of villainy was because of a girl who was just an extra in the background. A rebellion had erupted in the North family, and Raven found himself wandering the streets. The girl tricked him into going to her house and then sold him to a servant dealer. Raven was then taken to the Imperial Palace, where the North family coveted his power. He endured countless hardships for 10 years before finally managing to escape one day. However, by that point, everything had already gone downhill. Upon regaining consciousness, our female protagonist discovers that she has been possessed by Evelyn, the girl responsible for turning Raven into a vengeful villain. She invites Raven into her home and encourages him to make himself comfortable. Surprisingly, he proves to be more obedient than she anticipated, causing her eyes to light up as she gazes at his face. She ponders whether his reputed good looks have something to do with it, despite his scruffy and weary appearance. Although he continues to glare at her, she assumes it is because he was too rushed to eat properly while fleeing. Recognizing that her first priority is to gain his trust, she offers him some bread and asks if he would like to have some. Additionally, she informs him that he will be staying at her house for a while and inquires about what she should call him. Initially, he responds with a single word, Raven, but then reconsiders. He reiterates that his name is Raven and asks for her name in return. As she looks into his fierce eyes, she realizes that despite his young age, he carries a sense of intensity. She instructs him to refer to her as Evelyn. Despite knowing that she should not involve herself with Raven, she cannot bear to leave him alone. At this point in the story, Raven is poisoned and being pursued by traitors from his family. Suddenly, his muscles tense and his eyes narrow, indicating that he is experiencing pain. She feels a surge of pity as she observes him, a child with nowhere to stay and no means to eat comfortably. She acknowledges that she played a role in creating this situation. However, in a split-second decision, she resolves to take responsibility and assist Raven. Once Raven finishes the bread, she apologizes for only having that to offer and asks if it was sufficient. He nods in agreement. Bringing a smile to her face, she is delighted that he enjoyed it. Suddenly, her demeanor changes as she becomes alert and taken aback. She quickly stands up and directs him to a room with a bed, insisting that he rest. At first, he appears suspicious and asks why. She explains that she just remembered some urgent business that will only take a moment. Apologizing, she guides him into the room. As she presses him against the locked door, she thinks to herself, "Here we go again." Opening the door, she is shocked and calls out Raven's name in a scream. Rushing to his side, she kneels down and asks if he's okay. Raven groans in pain, clutching his chest tightly. She realizes that his condition is more serious than she initially thought. Noticing symptoms of paralysis, she understands that moving his body will be difficult. Her first priority is to get him into bed. After carefully laying him down, she gently wipes his forehead with a handkerchief and notices that he has a high fever. Raven groans as he experiences a nightmare, his face tense and drawn. Evelyn urges him to wake up. In his nightmare, Raven returns from a stroll around the mansion and sees Farrell smiling. He rushes towards him, questioning why he is alone and where his father is. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks as he remembers that Farrell poisoned the head of the family, who is now in critical condition. In his mind, Raven asks Farrell what he has done. It becomes clear that information about the Northern family has been leaked, and Farrell was a spy sent by the Imperial family. Raven recalls how others had told him that Farrell betrayed the Northern family, but he was in denial. He asks them what they are talking about, refusing to believe that Farrell would do such a thing. Farrell forcefully pushes Raven and bids him farewell. After that, Raven finds himself locked in a cell, still unable to comprehend that Farrell had sold him to a slave trader. He desired to inquire whether he had truly betrayed him and his father, the two of them. Clutching his chest, he let out a groan of agony. When he attempted to utilize his power, he struggled due to the magic seal that had been placed upon him. He understood that he needed to escape from that place swiftly, or else he would be subjected to a genuine servant seal. After managing to flee, he somehow found himself in the charming village. Determined not to trust anyone again, he was also aware that the poison administered by the traders had spread extensively throughout his body. However, he knew he couldn't lose consciousness in a place like this. It was at that moment when he crossed paths with Evelyn, who inquired about his presence in that location. He realized she appeared to be around his age. Extending her hand, she suggested that if he had nowhere to go, he could come to her house. Recalling his promise not to trust anyone, he slowly opened his eyes and rose, only to realize it had all been a dream. As he glanced upwards, he noticed Evelyn sleeping, but his movements startled her awake, and she realized he was awake as well. She admitted to being startled because he had suddenly passed out and had a high fever. However, she was relieved to see him looking better now. She inquired if he was feeling all right and asked if she could examine him. He furrowed his brow and questioned what she would think if he continued to frown, as she might misunderstand and believe he was still in pain. With his handsome face, he should try to smile a little. Biting his lip, his narrowed eyes conveyed his confusion as he asked her why she was suddenly smiling. What did it mean to be handsome? Her smile widened as she replied that she was merely suggesting that it would be better if they smiled and conversed with each other. She confessed that from the moment she laid eyes on him, she found his eye color to be incredibly unique and beautiful. It was even more captivating up close. She also admitted that it had been a long time since she had interacted with someone face to face like this. Therefore, she asked if they could both be a little kinder to one another. He appeared stunned and unsure of how to respond. She mentions that since they'll be spending time together for a while, why not come up with nicknames? She suggests he can call her Belle and she'll call him Ree. What do you think? He looks away and mutters that she can do whatever she wants. Then she calls him Ray and tells him to get some rest since he's not feeling well. She assures him that she'll finish some housework and come back later. As she closes the door, she feels like his guard has slightly lowered. She believes that as they continue living together in this house, things will naturally fall into place. Taking advantage of Raven's rest, she decides to jot down everything she remembers about the original situation. It would be troublesome if she suddenly forgot something important when she needed it the most. Plus, if she gives an answer that doesn't match Evelyn's memories before being possessed, it might raise suspicion. She's confident that Raven's condition will improve in a few days and she's determined to take good care of him, send him back, and cure her own illness. She's aware that when the war breaks out in the Empire, she'll have to go into exile either to the kingdoms of Elasa or A, as those countries are safe from the flames of the Imperial War. Right now, her top priority is to earn enough money to sustain herself. Her grandmother, the only person who cared for her, has passed away and the money she left is slowly depleting. Suddenly, an idea sparks in her mind and she realizes that she has a way to cure her illness while also earning a living. There are weeds growing on the outskirts of the shadow forest that possess chaotic energy. Consuming these weeds, known as bard, while they're warm can cure Evelyn's disease. The full treatment process will begin if she consistently consumes bard, and at some point, she'll start vomiting blood, which is a side effect that prevents her from speaking. That's when she'll know it's time to stop consuming bard, and the treatment will conclude with drinking the highest quality holy water. Bard is a pretty common weed around here, but she's broke and can't even afford to buy it. However, there's someone in town who has a ton of bard in stock. She figures it's worth checking out, especially since she believes there's a lot of potential in using the original story she remembers. As she writes down her ideas, she smiles to herself. The next morning, she arrives at the house and wonders if anyone's home. She thinks the only potion maker in this village lives here. First things first, she needs to get a job and earn some money for living expenses. She wonders if it's possible to ask for a bit of bard supply as well. Feeling confident in her plan, she decides to knock on the door. But just as she's about to, the door swings open abruptly, causing her hair to fly back from the gust of wind. Standing before her is an older man with a scowl, demanding to know who she is. He mutters under his breath about a pesky human disturbing his sleep. Seeing him, she realizes this might not be an easy task after all. Nervously, she thinks he looks even more intimidating than she expected. The man is Jade, the only potion maker in the entire village. For someone like her, with no money or job, there's no better way to make a living than working with him. She puts on a smile and greets him, wishing him a good day. Getting straight to the point, she asks if he needs an assistant. He narrows his eyes and clenches his jaw, questioning what she means by that out of the blue. He doesn't need anything like that. She gasps, feeling rejected by his harsh response. But just as he's about to shut the door, she quickly places her hand on it and asks him to wait a minute. She assures him that she's fine with just an hourly wage and that she's not your average assistant. In her mind, she knows she can't come all this way and leave empty-handed. He stops and listens as she mentions she knows a secret potion recipe. As she ponders, she realizes how he reacts when someone successfully creates their own special potion recipe. It's a surefire way to be recognized as an intermediate creator. For someone like her, a low-level creator, his offer is incredibly tempting. Curious, he asks her about the recipe. She knew he would be interested, so she tells him it's a potion that can dye hair in rainbow colors. His eyes widen in astonishment. She thinks to herself, isn't he speechless? It's her little secret that this trend is all the rage in the capital these days. Suddenly, he screams at her, calling her a naughty brat. Confused, she wonders what he's talking about. He questions whether she thinks a brat like her knows a potion on the same level as the polymorph spell. He slams the door in her face, thinking she didn't expect this situation to arise. Now, she must resort to her backup plan. Even though she failed to secure a job as a bard, there should be other useful herbs in the house. She rummages through a box where failed research products are kept. She figures it's alright to take a little bit from there since they were meant to be discarded anyway. She selects several herbs that seem quite useful to her. She believes that if she combines them, she can somehow make some money. Perplexed, Jade watches her from the window. Before leaving the house, Evelyn had informed Raven that she was going out and would return later. She warned him not to answer the door, no matter who knocked, and to pretend he wasn't there. He asked her why he shouldn't greet guests, to which she replied by asking if he knew a place called Athos Upper Side. He confidently replied that he knew it well. She explained that a merchant from there occasionally visited their house, and he could be after him. She worried about the potential harm he could cause if he found him. She gently patted him on the head, reminding him to remember what she had said and to protect the house well. However, he brushed her off, insisting that he was not a child. Raven grew worried because it was already getting dark and she hadn't returned yet. He wondered where she had gone all by herself. At the very least, she should have informed him of her whereabouts, and when she would be back, without disregarding the person waiting for her. He thought to himself, questioning whether he was really just quietly waiting for a suspicious girl he barely knew. He remembered her smiling and concluded that the only reason he let his guard down was because she kept saying foolish things. There was no other explanation. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his body, causing him to groan in agony. He looked up and saw Evelyn standing there, smiling at him. She asked if he was okay being alone. Narrowing his eyes, he demanded to know where she had been. She explains that she went to get some herbs because it seemed he had wounds all over his body and needed treatment. His face flushed red as he asked what she meant by all over his body. He wondered if she had undressed him while he was unconscious. She assured him that she understood what he was thinking, but it wasn't like that. She admitted that she had become worried when she heard him groaning while she wasn't looking, and it seemed like he hadn't leaned his back against the chair even once. She pointed out that his back was injured. He had initially thought she was just naive and cheerful, but now he realized that she had a sharp side to her. She settled herself on a chair and looked at him, asking what he was doing. She insisted that he come over and sit down, instructing him to take off his shirt for a moment. He panicked and asked her again if she really wanted him to remove his shirt. She teased him, saying that she was curious about his body too. However, she quickly added that if she didn't treat his wounds, they would become infected. He reluctantly frowned at her, still unwilling to take off his shirt. She checked his back and confirmed that it was indeed messy, just as she had expected. She realizes he has been enduring this despite the state of his back. He probably got these wounds when he was sold into the servant market. She silently whispers that he must have been in a lot of pain, but he just glares at her. In response, suddenly the window shatters, and glass shards scatter everywhere. He shields her and asks if she's all right. She looks at him, stunned, and he repeats his question. She finally snaps out of it, and tells him she's fine. Raven's eyes fall on the stone that has been used to break the window. He wonders if those are the traitors after him, or maybe the servants' traitors. He immediately rushes and picks up the knife. Evelyn grabs his arm and tells him to calm down. She tells him she will deal with them. As she opens the door and steps outside, the first thing she hears is a barrage of curses directed at her. She recognizes the children cursing at her from Evelyn's memories. They always tormented her. She confronts them that they have come all the way to the house but won't come any closer. Jack says she wants them to come to her, but they will be cursed if they do that because of her unusual hair color. Evelyn was rejected even in the outskirts of the village. She takes a deep breath and thinks that even if they are acting like that, they are just kids. She just needs to scare them a little, and they will run away. She picks up a rock thrown her way and says she should show them what a real curse is. The color drains from their faces. They look like they have seen a ghost. Then, they run for their dear lives, screaming at the top of their lungs. She just sticks out her tongue at them in return, unimpressed that they're running away so quickly like that. When she looks away, Raven is looking at her from the window. She smiles at him and says she was able to handle it. He thinks about why she is so calm, as if she's used to this kind of situation. The treatment method using Bard in her illness has one precaution, which is that until the efficacy of bleeding and voice sensation is demonstrated, Bard intake should not be stopped. As her illness called Crad worsens over time, she reluctantly decided to consume Bard for treatment. But consuming this tasteless soup made only from this herb every meal feels maddening. The taste aside, the Bard she brought back then is also running out, which is a problem. She also reveals she visited Sir Jade for several more days, but he did not accept her as his disciple. The only hopeful thing is that today he popped up from the window to give her an errand. She thinks if she keeps going like this, she will just end up being an errand servant, not a disciple. Jack and Sarah hide behind the bushes and look at her through the window. She's lost in her thoughts as she looks out from the window, contemplating. Does she really have no choice but to go to the forest and fetch the Bard herself? She is also not sure if it is okay for her to go into that poisonous forest with illness in her body. Jack and Sarah glare at her, realizing she seems to be completely lost in her thoughts, and that is the best time for them to throw the rocks at her. She picks up a rock as she mutters. She leaves their village and calls her a witch. She's prepared to throw the rock at her, but someone suddenly grabs her arm to stop her. She looks up at the person restraining her. She tells him she doesn't want to miss this chance, and what's with him suddenly popping out like this and interrupting her? Raven glares at her and lets her know he will let it slide just this once, but not next time. So, she should leave quickly. After that, both Jack and her run away. Evelyn is watching the show from the window. She is impressed he handled it alone and that they are persistent. He then turns his accusing eyes towards her and points out all she does is the smart talking alone. He wants to know why she has been letting those eyesores go on like this, and suggests wouldn't it be better to just kill them. She flinches because of his response and thinks, as expected of a budding villain, no wonder why his future looks bleak. He still has a long way to go. Worry etches across her face when she thinks she doesn't have time to waste worrying like that, and she needs to recover her health as soon as possible so she can focus on helping Raven. He asks her why she keeps looking at the forest. He points out she was so distracted by the forest that she did not even notice when those troublemakers were approaching earlier. He mumbles under his breath that if that's the case, it's the forest, the only thing on her mind, and he never trusted those people at the end of the village. She asks him if he's implying that those people from the end of the village were talking about her, and if he thinks that she would leave him here alone and go to the forest. He knows there's nothing he cannot do but lets her know he has no intention of obediently following her. After a moment of silence, she finally admits the reason she was looking at the forest is because of an herb called bard. She further reveals it is the herb that she used to boil and eat in every meal. It may seem ordinary, but it's quite important to her as a food source. He remembers she was having soup earlier and calling it so bland. He wondered then why she still had it. She confesses that she has to keep eating it because of the circumstances, and she doesn't have money to buy food. She does not think she can find a job right away. That is why she is considering going into the forest to gather that herb herself. She messes up his hair, telling him there's no need for him to make that worried expression. He brushes her hand away and glares at her. He claims he never made such an expression. She smiles at him in response. She claims he's so cute sometimes. Sarah is throwing tantrums while standing to know what is up with the black-haired guy. She states Evelyn is acting weird lately too. She asks Jake if he thinks she has changed, and he replies yes, her aura has changed. She believes she's probably just putting on a show to impress that guy, and they're probably still flirting together. She calls them a disgusting couple and promises she won't let them get away with it. Meanwhile, in the North family, Schwann, the Northern Imperial physician, asks Luke, the Northern Knight Commander, if he has found Lord Soa. Luke replies no, but at least he has not been captured by the Imperial Palace. Schwann points out that the royal family must be desperately searching for him as well. Luke agrees and knows that although the Empire is searching all the border villages, the time is turning out like this. He believes there is no way he would have left quietly. Seeing that the traces of magic are cut off, he must have sealed his magic to avoid leaving any traces. If they can weed out the spies within the family and deal with the traitors, he will surely bring the prince back with his hands. Luke then asks him how the Lord is. Schwann replies still no signs of recovery. He also adds they cannot determine the type of poison the assassin used. However, it seems to be similar to what the former head of the family suffered from a long time ago. She, too, was poisoned at a royal banquet. Luke asks, could it be the filthy hands of the palace that once again did this? Schwann answers yes, they are even more sinister and cunning than he expected. The Emperor of the Empire, Argos, asks his man if he is claiming that they are still unable to find him. The man, trembling in fear, apologizes to him and asks for his mercy, but he has none to give. He states, useless, and raises his sword and slays him. He then asks his other men what about the ones planted in the Northern family. They reply only 2 are reachable, and it seems the Norths have found someone from their side. His Majesty comments he thought the North family were just brainless people, but it seems not. He cannot believe they already found that many of their people. He says, well, those guys are probably useless now, so he should deal with them. He then adds, no matter what, they should bring the child to him before the North does. He orders if he cannot detect his image, then he should detect blood. At 15 on a certain day in May, he asked Evelyn to deal with cabbage leaves, UTA pollen, and popcorn, and just like before, perfectly clean and tidy. It does look very skilled. May 5th at 21 the cheeky little girl did everything he ordered again today, and without fail, he headed to the place where he gathered the remaining ingredients. It seems like people still firmly believe that the place is a garbage dump, but that's not the extent of it. He threw the juice of today's trimmed pepper fruit into a barrel that looks as old as possible. As expected, the little girl recognized the valuable item and picked it up right away. On May 5th, Tennyson, the damn kid, came again in the morning. She excitedly told him that a mixture of Istra and Camera fruits showed hemostatic efficacy. On May 5th at 4's, hemostatic agents were made according to the child's instruction and achieved better results than before. He wrote in his diary, "Why do those children end up in such a hopeless village?" He guesses he should at least bring some silver coins to the little girl. Evelyn smiles, thinking Jade has opened up a little to her a bit now. Moreover, there are a lot of useful things piled up in the garbage dump, and this time she even got money. He gives her a silver coin and orders her to go down to the village and buy 2 books on herbalism and use the remaining money to buy whatever she wants. She thinks even though he is a bit tricky, he's a really nice person, except he still doesn't accept her as his assistant. With the extra money, she bought a book for Raven to read. She hopes that he will like it. Suddenly, her attention is caught by the people in front of her who are talking about her. She immediately hides in the corner from them. They discuss the painkillers she uses and question if it's time for the supply to run out. They are also aware that she's running low on funds and wonder how anyone can cope with an incurable disease without painkillers. Evelyn reveals they are the people from the servant market. She realizes by white they are referring to her in this village. Evelyn was ostracized by the villagers because of her unusual appearance as a half-elf. But ironically, because of her unusual appearance, servant traders were eagerly targeting her. The more unique a servant's appearance is, the more valuable they become. She thinks it has been a while since she last saw them, and now that she's seeing them again, she's starting to get angry. She feels like she will have to be careful around the village for the time being. They also say this time she will have no choice but to accept their offer and decide to visit her next week again. She realizes they're coming to her house next week. In the original, Evelyn didn't give up easily, and she just sold Raven to the servant trader instead of herself. She tells herself not to be scared. It is okay. There's still time until next week. She's determined not to let things go the way they happened in the original, and is resolute in her decision to help Raven. She thinks, first of all, they should quickly run away from this place. At that moment, she bumps into someone. It is Sarah, who lashes out at her for not looking straight ahead. She apologizes and wants to make sure she is not hurt. She then excuses herself, saying that she has urgent work, and she will leave first. Sarah glares at her while Jack checks up on her way. She mumbles under her breath that she cannot waste her time like this while servant traders are targeting her. It seems difficult to get barred from Mr. Jade right now, so she has to go to the forest to get what she needs for the final stage of the treatment. With new resolve, she tells herself to go without fear in the forest. She looks around for signs. There is a sign that points out ahead, and she follows the direction. Sarah, who is hiding behind the bushes, calls her stupid and thinks she's acting so proud, but let's see how it goes. Thanks to Mr. Jade's work during this period, she is able to identify a few herbs. She thinks even the air is better than she imagined, and things will get better once they start to blend in. However, something feels strange to her. She realizes the grass isn't something that grows here. She remembers she clearly followed the signs. Then why, on the other hand, Jack tells Sarah that he already changed the sign picture again. She tells him good job and that she's a girl she does not like. She asks him if he saw her carrying a book during the day. Upon his acknowledgement, she says she is sure she did it on purpose to show off. Even if they want to learn to read, they can't, and she shows off as a citizen who knows how to read. She decides she would tell the adults in an hour that she went into the dangerous forest. Jack does not look convinced but listens to her anyway. As they turn to leave, they are stopped by Raven, who asks them where did she go. Sarah tells him she heard she's going to the forest, and also calls her annoying. She further adds since she went into the sleeping fog she is sure she's asleep by now. He glares at them and warns them to stay here and wait, otherwise he won't let them go if they are not here when he comes back. Jack trembles and calls for Sarah, who tells him she thinks they are in big trouble. Raven rushes into the forest. He thinks it is a big deal. He needs to find her quickly. Although known to the public as simple sleep fog, actually, that fog does not exert much power during the day. But at night, even the knights cannot deal with it. This is the fog emitted by the plant bodies, he thinks. The sun will set completely soon. So why did she go into the forest where plant bodies are at a time like this? He hurts his hand, and it starts bleeding, and then he thinks he tried so much to avoid using this method. He curses under his breath and runs after her into the forest, calling for her. Raven recalls when he was young, his father telling him that even if he masters the family's magic, he must never use it. But he asked his father why and expressed his wish to become a powerful mage. So why can't he use it? His father replied because that magic is so powerful that it shortens the caster's lifespan. He then asked Raven if he remembered their ancestor, the apostate Jinan. He was a person from another world, a wielder of forbidden magic, and also a magecraft like Raven. He gained the power that encompassed worlds. His father told him people like him are capable of mastering it, and they gain power that encompasses worlds. But in the end, they are also consumed by it. His father told him to never forget. The more he uses blood magic, the closer he comes to becoming a demon lord. Back in the present, Raven is aware he must not use this power, but there's no other way to save Evelyn. He runs deeper into the forest and finally finds Evelyn, who is surprised to see him, and asks him how he came here. But he calls her a fool and shouts at her to look behind her. When she does, her eyes widen in disbelief. He calls her by the nickname she had given herself, Belle, and rushes towards her. As she gradually regains consciousness to the gentle sound of rain, she wonders at what point she had fallen asleep. She remembers everything happened so quickly that she couldn't see it clearly, but it felt like something attacked her. Suddenly, her eyes widen when she remembers Raven saved her. She looks up and finds herself in the embrace of Raven, who is holding her gently. She giggles as she looks deep into his golden eyes, running her fingers through his hair. As she reminds him he has finally addressed her by her name this time instead of dismissing her, he leans into her touch, his gaze uncharacteristically soft as he asks how can she joke even in this situation. He then groans in pain. She asks him what is wrong. She looks ahead where all the monsters are melting away by his magic. She wonders if this is his power. Raven is aware since he used that power, his traces will inevitably be left here too. He had planned to hide here until all the infiltrations in the family were dealt with. He says out loud it's not so bad that it turned out like this. He has no regrets. Later, both Jack and Sarah are on their knees as he interrogates them, telling them if they both have excuses then go ahead and try it. Sarah still has the audacity to ask what they did so wrong to deserve this. Raven, who seems done with them, turns to Evelyn and asks if they should just get rid of them. She is quick to tell him no and then confronts Sarah herself, asking her if she doesn't know what she did wrong. Sarah explodes, reminding her all that happened to her was that she fell asleep for a moment, and why she's making such a fuss when she is not even hurt. She steps forward threateningly, but Jack pulls her back. She tells her she's pretty and talented, and she knows how to read. She can leave the village and earn money. Then why does she feel so wrong by spending one night in the forest? What did she do wrong? Evelyn replies if it wasn't for Raven, she would have almost died there. They are both taken aback by this revelation. She informs them there are dangerous creatures in the forest, and they exhale a sleep-inducing mist. If Raven was just a little late, she would have been asleep and become prey for those creatures. Even if they claim not to have known, do they really think they are not at fault at all? Sarah lowers her head, looking ashamed and guilty. She claims she is not lying, she did not know that, and she just wanted to tease her a bit. She thought it would not be a dangerous place. Jack also claims he never wished for her death. Evelyn thinks they are not lying, seeing their reactions. She rubs her head tiredly and exclaims now that they both know their mistake, that's all that matters. But if they still pull a stunt like this again, she won't stay silent. She then tells them it is late, they should go home now. They leave looking ashamed. Suddenly she stumbles, but Raven swiftly moves to her side, catching her in his arms and asking if she's all right. She embraces him tightly, expressing her relief. She admits the truth is she was extremely scared. He calls her Belle and assures her it is okay. Evelyn feels ashamed. She promised herself she would take good care of Raven, but instead ended up needing his help. What a fool she is. She drapes her arms around his neck and hugs him tightly. She expresses her gratitude, thanking him for coming to her rescue. He returns her hug and tells her it is fine. That night, when Evelyn is in her bed, she thinks the situation was so dire that she didn't have time to think deeply. But since Raven used magic, there must be his traces left in the forest. She knows with pursuers on their tail, she needs to erase those magical traces as quickly as possible. She thinks Raven went so far as to use magecraft to save her. She cannot just sit back and watch. An idea comes to her mind, but she wonders if she should make use of that. The next day, they are by the waterfall. When she reminds him, didn't she tell him to come here? She wears a look of playful mischief. Evelyn knows there is no way to erase the trace of the magician itself now. So it would be best to buy time until Raven recovers and returns to the North State. This is the method she came up with, a potion to summon monsters. If she uses this to summon a monster to the place where traces of magic remain, it can look like Raven used his powers to save himself from the monster. Eventually, it can instill psychic belief that he lost his life. Even if it is a dirty trick, if the other person is still looking for Raven, it is necessary. However, she doesn't know if she will still be able to fake it, so she gets ready to leave for the forest. This morning, she lied to Raven, telling Raven that she is going to the lake near the forest to do her laundry. He got mad at her and questioned if she was thinking about going to the forest again after being put through such a situation. She handed over the basket to him and said if she wasn't to go alone, then he could lead the way, she would go with him. She never imagined that Raven would follow along like this. Her initial plan was to go alone because if she used that kind of potion in front of Raven, it's obvious that he will look at her very suspiciously. She looked at him and wondered if she could do it naturally without Ray finding out. She decided to give it a try. Back in the present, she tells him what he's doing there. She told him to come in too. He looks a bit shy as he reminds her she was here to do the laundry. She replies she is going to do the laundry too. It was hard to climb up, so they should take a break. He reminds her they are not kids. She thinks it is a strategy to do it quickly when he's distracted by her water play. She then thinks obviously they are still kids. She makes a sad face and tells him not to say that and demands him to come in here and play with him. She whines that it is not fun if she plays alone. He flushes red but still agrees to do it. He slowly comes into the water, still looking hesitant. She asks him what's the matter, did he get bitten somewhere? He replies he's okay. He was a little surprised as the water was cooler than he expected. She smiles, thinking of him as a cat and wonders is this why there is no cat in the zodiac sign. Suddenly she splashes him with water playfully and smiles, teasing him if it's cold. He splashes the water too, asking if she wants to experience the same thing. She giggles in return. After they are done with the water play drenched, they sit together on a rock. Evelyn forgot to do what she decided because she got distracted playing with Raven, who seems so excited. She looks up at him and smiles a little, thinking well it was a good thing because Ray was happy. She then gasps in surprise, telling Raven his hair has become shiny and darker than usual. She wonders if it is because he got wet, it is so pretty. He asks her what she means pretty. She pokes him in the cheek, telling him it is a sincere compliment, and not something to be embarrassed about. Suddenly he states her hair also shines when it gets wet, causing her to pause in surprise. She smiles and looks down at her hair. She asks him if she should cut it and sell it later. He flinches in surprise, asking her what she's talking about. Why is she going to sell it? She tells him her hair grows back anyway. Now that she thinks about it, she thinks she could make some money since her hair has a unique color. She further adds maybe it could really help with living. She thinks it would be so nice then, as she would be able to buy Raven some nice clothes. Raven mutters softly that his family has a great deal of money enough for her, but he speaks so quietly that she doesn't even hear him. She is busy thinking about what kind of clothes would look good on him. He rubs his face embarrassed and states that he said nothing. She believes since he is very good looking he will look good no matter what he wears. Her gaze then falls on him. She wonders why did his face suddenly turn red. Did he catch a cold from playing in the water for too long? Anyway, the sun is going to set soon, so she has to do that thing before it's too late. She suddenly gasps, "Oh my God, did she take the potion by mistake?" She asks herself what should she do. He questions what she means by potion. She tells him these are the potions she brought because those people said they were going to throw it away. She tells him she forgot that she put it in her clothes pocket and accidentally brought it with her. She picks one of them and tells him this is an omnivorous monster. Her hand slips, causing the potion to spill into the lake along with the other potions and the basket of clothes. She gives him a side eye and wonders if he noticed it. He tells her to quickly get out of the water. She says yes. She thinks it must be a perfect performance, since he fell for it. He asks her why she brought such a dangerous potion. She lies that she didn't see it properly because she was in such a hurry to get it. She reminds him it could be dangerous, so they should leave and go back. The clothes that fell along the potions are the clothes Raven was wearing the first time they met, clothes that are stained with his blood. She knows soon the monster will flock and leave its mark. If only that happens, there will be confusion among the imperial family who are looking for Ray in the imperial palace. His Majesty's man informs him that he found Raven north. He found traces of that kid. His Majesty says he finally got something. The man says yes, among the demonic beasts, there were clothes with blood on, and given the circumstances it seems very likely that he died after being attacked by a monster. His Majesty seems to think about it. The next day, as Evelyn is drying the dishes, she steals a glance at Raven, who is sitting and reading a book. She wonders how much longer can Raven and she be together. It's already been a few months since he came here, and soon the North family search parties will also find this place. She knew from the start he would leave someday, but it's a shame because she feels like there's really not much time left. She guesses she has become more attached to him than she thought. During that time, she feels it would be nice if she could at least give him a meaningful gift before he leaves. She wonders what would be good. There's a harsh knock at the door, and someone telling her to open the door. She suddenly swivels around when she hears that voice, her eyes narrowed and alert. He is the man from the servant market. She requests Raven, would he please stay in the room for a moment, and not make a sound. He asks her why. She says actually, someone is supposed to come visit today, and he is not a very welcoming guest. The man screams he knows she is inside and to open it quickly. She says to Raven just by listening that he can understand why she is hesitant, right, so he should hurry up and go inside. He says he understands and reluctantly enters the room and locks it. She sighs in relief since Raven is hidden now. Next, she opens the door so fast that it hits the man in the nose. She screams at the man to get out and that he's making too much noise. Does he think this is his house? The man holds his nose, asking what she's doing and calling her a crazy woman. He shows her a painkiller and says can she see what's in his hand here, acting like this won't work well for her. She realizes it's the only narcotic painkiller that alleviates the pain of her disease. It is an expensive item that cannot even be bought by selling a house, and it's a dangerous item that could lead to addiction if not careful. With no other option, the original Evelyn knew she had to depend on the drug, even as she realized she was becoming addicted to it. So, she ended up choosing yet another path to death, but there's someone else who deserves to be punished for that. She tells him she is not buying it. She told him last time she doesn't have money. She thinks since she is now in her place, everything will change from now on. He tells her she cannot buy it at this price from another place. She tells him to forget it, she will make it and eat it herself from now on. So, if he has a manufacturing kit, he should sell it instead. He comments, "Come on, she doesn't think potion making is child's play, does she?" She asks him if he is going to sell the manufacturing kit or not. He tells her she will regret it and throws another package towards her. She says good. A sudden sound comes from the room, causing Evelyn to worry. The man notices it too and asks what it is. He clearly heard a noise. She lies to him that maybe something fell over because of the wind and pushes him away. He says whatever, fine, and to tell him if she changed her mind. She suddenly dashes to the room and bursts through the door, finding Raven in pain on the floor. She asks him what is going on. She kneels down next to him and pulls him into her lap, asking him if he's okay. What is all this? She glares at the mark on his chest. It is the servant mark. Sometimes when they capture a rare servant that is difficult to manage, they stamp a mark of the free trading group before stamping the real servant mark. This is done to prevent the servant from running away before the actual transaction. It is said that servants marked with this pattern have seizures when there is a servant trader with a brand nearby. She already knew Raven had escaped from the servant quarters, but she never imagined he would also have been branded. He fixes her with a warning gaze and wants her not to look, and he is not a servant. Raven believes the one who came looking for her outside was definitely a servant trader. He thinks there should not be a reason for them to come looking like this. He looks at her suspiciously and wonders if it could be her, but then he dismisses that thought because she would not do that. However, he cannot help but think that if she finds out he's being chased by the servant traders, she will surely despise him. She suddenly curses them, causing him to be stunned. She exclaims they are not satisfied with making his back like this, so they have to do things like that as well. She then tells him to hold on for a bit, she will get some medicine. He grabs her hand and asks her if she knew that he escaped from the servant market. She lets him know even if she knows it does not change anything, she's not going to send him to those people. He looks surprised. A few days later, she looks at his bandaged body and asks how his body is. He assures her it is not bad. She wants to talk about that mark, but he cuts her off, saying it is okay. It will naturally disappear after a while. She sighs in relief. He then asks her since when did she know that he escaped from the servant market. She tells him not to misunderstand. They didn't come here to look for him but for her. Those men sometimes come to her to sell painkillers and all sorts of things. She grabs his hand with both of hers and states she also knew that the servant markets were looking for him from the pattern. So if she had known that the person would be one of them, she would have prevented him from approaching the house in the first place. He tells her he has been lying down all of this time, and he has been feeling stuffy, so he's going to go outside and stretch his legs for a bit. She asks suddenly he should not overdo it yet. He responds he will just loosen up a bit and come back so she doesn't need to worry. Just as he reaches for the door, he looks back and says thank you. She's taken aback at first but then recovers and smiles. Outside, as he's doing stretches, he cannot help but keep thinking about Ray and her smiles. A blush slowly spreads across his cheeks. In the middle of the night, a golden light shines towards a knight's hands. Luke informs his subordinate to tell the mansion they've found Lord Soga's trail. He's sure it's a trail of their liege using magic. It's hard to believe he escaped alone intoxicated by poison. Luke believes Soga has been worried and he will escort him home. The next day Evelyn woke up yawning. She slept in longer than usual. She ponders if Ray already ate breakfast. Upon entering the kitchen she notices it's a complete mess. She calls out to Ray and catches him by surprise. She asked if he made the food in the table. She also noticed he looks cute in an apron. The weather is great today, so great that they're going to eat outside. I wish that was me. She never imagined he could cook, despite the fact that he trashed the kitchen. She smiles brightly and thanks him for cooking for her. He looks away nervously and passes her a chicken soup. Suddenly she notices something and is taken aback. She grabs his hand and asks if he injured himself while cooking. He tells her it's a small cut. She looks at him with a worried expression, stating what if it leaves a scar. She's glad Ray cooked for her, but she doesn't want to see him get hurt. She'll treat his wounds when they get back home. He takes his hand away and turns his head. He then agrees, after she finished eating, She thanks him and praises him for making such a great meal for the first time. However, he tells her it wasn't that difficult, since he's seen her cook before. But he seems oblivious of the mess he has caused. But it's touching that he tried so hard for her. Suddenly she feels strange sensation. She then coughs, which makes Raven concerned. When she looks at her hand, she sees blood, the treatment she saw in the second step of the treatment method for Crad. She's starting to cough up dead blood. She's relieved the soup she had made is definitely working. Raven approaches her, inquiring if she's okay. She tells him she only lost consciousness for a sec. She suggests they head back home. That night, he ponders about her. It was odd, he had smelled blood and her complexion was pale. She's clearly hiding something, but why isn't she telling him? She only kept brushing it off. There might be something she can't talk about, so he shouldn't jump to conclusions. Suddenly he feels a presence. Upon opening the window, Luke, the leader of the Black Knights, bowed before him. Raven questions if he's gotten rid of all the spies. Luke responds with an affirmative. He then questions about his father. It is revealed that Raisban is still unable to open his eyes. Realizing that they came to bring him back, he ponders that it's still too dangerous for him to return, and he thinks Bell is hiding something. He informs them that he will remain for a while longer, if he returns, while his father is still unconscious. He will be targeted again. He will return when his father awakes. He orders them to eradicate all traces of their presence there. If necessary, they should protect the village. Luke gladly proclaims he will obey his orders. Also, he demands that they protect the child he is currently in debt to.